This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint. Ira, what do we do about the Duncan Robinson situation?
You know what? It doesn't matter, Clay, what we do. It matters what Erik Spoelstra does. I was talking to someone involved with the Heat last night, and they said for the first time they thought maybe you give it a little further consideration. Here's the problem, Clay. When you have this starting lineup like it's set up right now with Bam Adebayo, PJ Tucker, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, and Kyle Lowry, you know you need at least one more big. So you're going to have Dwayne Dedmon and, of course, Tyler Herro, your sixth man. Do you get to Max Strus? Because do you get to Max Strus if you're also going to play Victor Oladipo and you're also going to go with the relentless hustle of Caleb Martin? Now, you mentioned on a crosstalk with Big O at the top of the show, maybe you do what I've been talking about for months now, that Luke Babbitt role of, give Duncan 3-4 minutes to start of each half. If he's making a bunch of threes, you play him a little bit longer. But I'm not sure you still can cycle to your 10th man with that kind of rotation. I didn't even mention Markieff Morris, by the way, when I gave you the 9 deep there. So I think you do have to consider that. And as much as Duncan Robinson has been fabric of this team with his dribble handoffs and his screen and rolls with Bam Adebayo, Max Strus shows a lot of that also. And he is the better defender. And he is the tougher body in there, more physical presence. And his foul rate is not the same foul rate as Duncan Robinson, where all of a sudden the opposing team is in the bonus in the first quarter because of Duncan's fouls with 6 minutes to go in the period. So I think it is legitimate. And we've seen this before. We've seen it with Kendrick Nunn. He starts the whole regular season, and then Erik Spoelstra says, okay, Goran Dragic, you're starting right now. But the elephant in the room is this: 5-year, $90 million contract. And so if you say, that's okay, we'll trade Duncan in the offseason, well, he's still pretty close to 4 years and about $75 million left. Not the most tradable deal also. So you're weighing the contract, you're weighing the future, and you're weighing the moment. Hey, if you wind up in a first-round matchup against Charlotte, maybe Atlanta, you might say to yourself, you know what, we could buy some more time with this. If you wind up in a first-round matchup against Brooklyn, you might go, hey, it's go time. This is our conference finals right now. So, yeah, I think the Duncan thing is more in play than maybe I've been letting on or wanted to let on. Because, again, the starting lineup's record, Clay, is so good.
Yeah.
And I use this in my Ask Ira on Sentinel.com this morning. Do you mess with a good thing? For all we're saying about what's not working, it's still win-win-win. All they want to do is win with this lineup. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, I think it's at least a debate point right now, Clay. I would agree with that.
So here's my deal with this. It's not about who starts, it's about who finishes, right? We hear that all the time. Last night, the Heat were winning this game 29-22 at the end of the first quarter. So the starting point wasn't the problem. Now you can make the case that, hey, the third quarter was absolute garbage, and clearly that's been an issue for this team for years. They have a name for it for the third quarter. But I think, Ira, changing the starting lineup doesn't change much of what's this Heat team's problem right now. It's, okay, how do we find the minutes for the best players, the guys who are playing the best? And the issue with Duncan, I think, you know, when you mentioned the Luke Babbitt role, I think there are some eye rolls because it's like, yeah, he's making $90 million. You didn't pay Luke Babbitt $90 million. But at some point, you have to throw the contracts out the window when it comes to this team and this rotation. And you can't care how much each player is making. And so what I think you do, Ira, with the Luke Babbitt role, it's, okay, if Duncan goes out there and he's hot, then you roll with it and you let it right. And you understand that you're going to take the hits on the defensive end of the floor. Because at this point, Ira, I'm kind of at the point where he is who he is defensively. And if you're making up for it more than making up for it on the offensive end, then it's a pretty simple cash in, cash out, right? I mean, if you're making money on the offensive end of the floor more than you're losing it on the defensive end of the floor, then you play him. But I think you have enough options at this point where you have to go with what's best for the team regardless of contract. And I think you start him. I think you see if he's got a good thing going that night. But the hook's got to be quick. I mean, you can't give him a long leash at this point because these minutes are too valuable. And you've got too many guys, to the point that Miami Fan Fanatics said earlier on in the chat. This team is too deep. And I would be a lot more comfortable with Strus. I'd be a lot more comfortable with Caleb Martin out there on a night when Duncan Robinson is shooting 2 for 10. And so I think at this point it's got to be, all right, you roll out there with the starting lineup. keep that as it is, but also understand that starting might end up being the only minutes that you play through the entire game if you're not hitting. And I'd be perfectly fine with that.
And yet the way the rotation worked out yesterday, which is why this is also a concern of mine, and Clay, you brought that up and it's a very good point. If Caleb Martin wasn't out with the hyperextended left knee, I'm not so sure that Max Strus ever gets in that game.
That's true.
Because Gabe Vincent starts the second half in place of Jimmy Butler. They've been using him as the placeholder. You know that Eric Spoelstra likes to keep his rotation in order and just slide a guy in there. But I think when Max got the call, that would have been the natural spot for Caleb Martin to come in and give his hustle minutes instead. Not the three-point shooter, of course, that Max Strus is, but more of a two-way player also. So when we're conjuring our rotations, I think Caleb Martin has made himself an absolute must-play somewhere in your rotation. Eric Spoelstra then was highly complimentary of what Markieff Morris did last night, including a small
and
ball
by the way,
lineup.
he looked much better last night than he did in game one.
Yeah, well, you know what? After 58 games off, you might come back, a little less than whole. Then you get a couple of days off. Then you get into a rhythm. Here's another interesting point about the sort of the Clay Ferraro rotation plans and all of that. Could it be, Clay, and no one 2-3 weeks ago thought of it this way, that Markieff Morris winds up of the two, of he and Victor Oladipo, being the guy who gets more rotation minutes in the playoff rotation? Could it simply be that Markieff, from where he was to where he is now, is able to make it back quicker than the guy who had the surgery in May, who's being limited to 15 to 16 minutes a game? I mean, so far, if you're talking about body of work, only 2 games from Markieff, about 5 games so far from 4 games from Victor Oladipo. I think that's going to be interesting also. Victor Oladipo is not a core culture Heat guy that you've sweated blood and tears with for so long. He's a guy you added along the way. I don't think there's the loyalty specifically to either Vic or to Markieff that if Eric Spoelstra has to hold one out, that's what it's going to be. We all have these great hopes for Victor Oladipo. And I do need to see one thing, Clay. I need to see the monitor removed. I need to see the one Victor Oladipo game where it's this: play as many minutes as you want. Yeah. Get into a rhythm. Whether it's we're giving Kyle off tonight, we're giving Tyler a break, Jimmy's not going to be able to play for a week or something like that. I don't know if Victor Oladipo is ready for that. I don't think he is ready for that now. But until we have a game like that, there were no minutes restrictions last night on Markieff Morris. He simply played what was needed out of Markieff Morris, had a pretty damn good game. But we knew with Vic that eventually, after 8 minutes in the second half, he was coming out regardless of what happens. Can Victor Oladipo get back to regular rotation minutes in games that still matter before the playoffs? Or else that's going to be a significant question. No matter what Vic was 2 years ago in Indiana, no matter what Vic could be, it's in the moment right now. And after last night's game, if we're doing report cards or something like that, it looks like if we're with Big O with this cryptocurrency, I'm probably buying more of Markieff Morris than I am buying Victor Oladipo right now because of what I've seen so far.
Well, and what I said before Vic even came back was he was going to have to prove that he was better and more worthy of minutes than Caleb Martin. And it's not, we're talking about Markieff Morris versus Victor Oladipo, but that's going to be more matchup based. It's going to be more situational. If you need a big out there, clearly Morris is the guy who's going to go out there and he's going to give you the tough minutes against those guys inside. If you need a wing player, Victor Oladipo is going to need to prove, assuming Caleb Martin is fully healthy, and thankfully that hyperextended knee that looked much worse than the diagnosis ultimately was. As long as he's good to go, man, what he's shown you on a consistent basis, it's like that first game for Oladipo was a supernova. But man, the star between the two, the consistent star, if you're comparing the two, has been Caleb Martin, and it's somebody that I think the floor of what he's going to bring night in and night out, and he's somebody who's going to bring that athletic ability. He's not going to have, we don't think, the concerns and try to make up for whatever injury might be there. With Vic, you still need to see it. You need to see him 100% confident in his body, and I thought we saw that in game one. But you need to see how that manifests itself moving forward. So I'm with you, and I think it was not fair to expect Victor Oladipo's progress to be linear, like for him to go out there game one and play really well, and then the next game he gets even better and better. But at the same time, I think those expectations had been set based on who we had seen before. And if you're comparing him so far and what we've seen in his short sample size versus what we've seen from Caleb Martin throughout the season, I don't think you could take Caleb Martin off the floor and take him out of that rotation. So we need to see more from Vic down the stretch in order to give him those minutes in crunch time against the better teams in the NBA come playoff time. But if he doesn't, I think you got a really good, safe backup option in Caleb Martin. And when I say safe, you have somebody who may be an even better player at his best than what we've seen from Oladipo so
And
far.
Clay, maybe it's as simple as this. Maybe on this team, the way the rotation currently is right now, Victor Oladipo can't be Victor Oladipo. And by that, what I mean is Victor Oladipo is a high usage player. The
Right.
ball in Indiana was in his hands a lot. The ball, even during his brief tenure in Houston when he had his best games, was in his hands a lot. Victor Oladipo is not only coming in now with the second unit, but he's coming in with the second unit that features Tyler Hero, who might be, honestly, the highest heat usage player in those minutes since Dwayne Wade. The ball is always in his hands. Victor Oladipo off the ball, it's sort of like you're taking away half his magical powers.
Right.
He's not the same player. Victor Oladipo spotting up for three-point shots is not the Victor Oladipo game. He has never been a great or even a good three-point shooter. He's a different player. So again, is there a moment when you can cast Victor Oladipo in that, here's the ball, do the Oladipo? Probably not playing alongside Tyler. Tyler has usurped that responsibility, and he's been outstanding in it. So I think that's why we're not seeing the best of Vic. Barkeef, on the other hand, has always played as a secondary player, has always played off of other players. One of my Ask Ira questions today was, when is Eric Spoelstra finally going to call plays for Victor Oladipo? Clay, why should he call plays for Victor Oladipo? Eric Spoelstra's concern is calling plays for Jimmy Butler, for Tyler Hero, for Kyle Lowry, for Bam Adebayo. That's his priorities right now. Now, if Tyler Hero was starting, maybe this is something we get into instead of Duncan Robinson, and then Victor Oladipo came in with nothing but supporting players. If he came into the second unit with a Dwayne Dedmon and a Gabe Vincent and a Max Strus and a Caleb Martin, yeah, you're damn well sure I want the ball in his hands, and maybe we'll see more of that Indiana all-NBA, all-star type of player, but that's not what this team is set up for right now. This team was not set up for Victor Oladipo to be the best Victor Oladipo because he's just a bit part here. He's just a complimentary player. And you know this, Clay. You've seen some players who, when you cast them as complimentary players, they're completely different than their career resume. Some can adjust, and some go Westbrook. So it's just a matter of, can you deal? Russell Westbrook owned the offense at the end of last season. With Beal's injuries and just with the Wizards, they desperately need him. He was a triple-double machine. The Wizards won. Then Russell Westbrook goes to the Lakers when Anthony Davis is healthy. They have LeBron there. He's not the guy anymore. That's a hard transition. That's why I'm not so sure of Victor Oladipo's future, because you and I have been talking for weeks. Come this offseason, he'd have two major perimeter decisions. I'm not even getting to Caleb Martin. Tyler Hero's rookie scale extension, a Bam Adebayo-like number, and what are they going to do with Victor Oladipo? Could it be in the dark recesses of 601 Biscayne Boulevard, in Pat Riley's office with the shades pulled, and Andy Ellisberg and Nick Harrison and Adam Simon in there, they've just come to the realization, we're paying Tyler. We're probably going to pay something in the Tyler Johnson range for Caleb Martin. God bless Vic. Let's go say all the right things through our mouthpiece, Eric Spoelstra. But the reality is that battle has been won. When it comes to the big lumps of cash the Heat are going to spend, they're going to Tyler Hero this offseason. So maybe this whole Vic thing is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
But maybe it's to be continued with another team.
I would say this too. What I would like to see the Heat do a little bit more of, and you know, to your point about having more ball dominant guys on the floor, it's okay, if you're going to have that, then treat it as a positive and go matchup hunting. Because that's the one thing that I'm not sure that I've seen enough from the Heat so far this season. And we see it a lot when teams play against the Heat. Guys are going up against, they're hunting Duncan Robinson. They're going to hunt Tyler Hero when he's on the floor. And it's going to get worse in the playoffs. So I guess my question is, if you've got somebody like Vic, who you can play, who is ball dominant, who still has, and that first step is still really quick. He's not going to, but this gets back to your point as far as being the ball dominant player. He needs the ball in his hand for that first step to really matter unless he's slashing. So why, if you're going to have both of them on the floor, don't just always make it automatic Tyler Hero. go and find who their worst defender is and
But
ISO whoever has the ball.
I disagree with you for this reason. The way the NBA is being defended these days, you can almost get any pick and roll switch you want. This goes back to the Lakers and the Warriors championship series, where the Lakers would get Steph on the ball. The Warriors would try to do the same against the weaker Cavaliers defender and play it that way also. Cavaliers, Warriors, when they were in those 4 straight NBA finals. So, Clay, if I can run a pick and roll, maybe with Dwayne Dedmon, and get my preferred defender on there or another wing, why wouldn't you run it every time for Tyler Hero? Why wouldn't you cast your future to your 6th Man of the Year award winner, arguably a guy who probably should be in the race also for most improved player? You run your pick and rolls for the best players. The Lakers aren't saying, you know what, Westbrook used to do this really well. LeBron, you get out of the way. We're going to run for this Westbrook kid instead. You play to your best players. The NBA, for as much as we talk about 5 men on a string and sharing the ball in a beautiful game, has become a pick and roll to death until Donovan Mitchell with the Utah Jazz gets the pick and roll option of his defender, where the Heat runs that with their starting unit as well, and where you're probably looking at Tyler Hero. I would say this. Of all the players for Victor Oladipo to play us alongside on the Miami Heat, the toughest one for his individual success, not the Heat success, but his individual success, might be playing alongside Tyler Hero. And you know what? Screw it. I got to win. And Tyler Hero is a 17-point second quarter guy. I'm not saying when Tyler's rolling through 17 points in his second quarter or 21 in the second quarter against Houston, but we haven't gotten Vic any touches yet. That's not fair.
No,
to
I
Vic.
agree.
This
I
isn't
get
youth
that.
soccer.
I get that.
Not everyone's going to get.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.